I want to make a video now about how NASA achieved weightlessness, or the illusion of weightlessness, what they call microgravity, on board the International Space Station. Now, I'm not completely convinced that they use the same technique in all the videos. They definitely don't. Some of them, they hang them upside down on harnesses, and then they turn the camera upside down, and you can see them hanging off a harness. That's obvious. But not all of them are done that way. Some people say they're done in this thing, the Vomit Comet, which does parabolic flights, and as it goes down at free fall speed like that, everybody floats up out of their seat, and they have this sensation of being weightless. They are weightless, and it simulates, supposedly it perfectly simulates microgravity that you would get on board the ISS if you were orbiting around the Earth. For me, there's a problem with that because they only get 25 seconds of weightlessness, and some of the video footage I've seen, it's been uncut sequences of footage which are maybe up to 5 minutes. So that's a hell of a lot longer than 25 seconds. I don't believe they're doing that all the time. They might do it sometimes, but not all the time. I mean, look at this.
All of the walls here, all sorts of stuff that we do. And one of the things we also...
I mean, it definitely looks like the interior of an aeroplane. It's a metal cylinder that they're inside. It's the same size as the inside of the aeroplane. You can see that. Let's go back to that picture. Where is it? There you go. It's the same size, same shape. It'd be easy to make a mock-up on board the aeroplane and then have them floating around. Definitely. But like I said, some of the sequences of footage are longer than 25 seconds. Also, you'd have to set everything up. After 25 seconds, everything would fall down to the floor, and you'd have to pick it up, and you'd have to get all the props together, and then position the actor back in exactly the same position to maintain continuity. It'd be a nightmare working under those conditions. Absolute nightmare. Also, she doesn't look that, stressed. She doesn't look... No, that's not how they're doing it. They're not doing that.
The bike bounces around a little bit.
You hear that noise in the background?
As I move it, it's not steady.
It sounds like an aircraft's engines, doesn't it? It sounds like they're on board an aircraft.
And held to the wall firmly. And the reason for that is...
But I don't think that's the sound of the engines. I think that's something else. There is a way of making things float around and levitate on the Earth. Don't have to go up into space. It's been known about since 1933. Francis Bitter created a very strong magnetic field, and he was able to demonstrate that objects could be levitated. So it's been around for a long time, and it works on living things. There's a frog floating around. I'll show you. There you go. Does that look familiar? See that? It's a frog floating around on the Earth, but weightless. Uses this principle called diamagnetism. Doesn't just work on frogs, it works on pieces of wood, works on plastics, different kinds of metals, copper, water particularly. Check this out. There was a Dutch research group that did this frog research. They made this bitter electromagnet, which is basically a metal cylinder, and whatever you put inside it will just float around. So they did this in 2014. Well, they did it before then, but NASA in 2009 NASA picked up on it. JPL announced that they'd successfully levitated mice using this technique, an important step forward since mice are closer biologically to humans than frogs. They hope to perform the experiments regarding the effects of microgravity on bone and muscle mass. Where have we heard that before? The astronauts. That's what they say they're doing up there. They're doing these experiments on their to see how weightlessness affects their bone density. But isn't this odd? Why would NASA consider it a great step forward and want to experiment on mice because they're biologically close to humans, when they've got a space station in real microgravity with real humans on board, and they're already doing experiments on it? Why would you use a model organism when you can experiment on the real thing, when you are experimenting on the real thing? That doesn't make any sense. What does make sense is that they scaled up this solenoid, made a giant cylinder, about the size of one of the modules on the ISS, for instance, with humans in it instead of frogs and mice, and that's what we're seeing. Practically anything inside that field will float around as if it were weightless. Now if you, there you go, there's your frog floating around in your cylinder.
Move around a little bit, and that way we don't put any forces.
Everything moves around a little bit. Watch the video of the frog again. See how he moves around a little bit? Now the difference between the frog and NASA is that the people on board NASA can grab hold of... See, they're all floating around?
Of command.
They keep having to anchor their feet onto these anchors on the floor, hold on to things, steady themselves.
And recently we've been...
He's using a near-field mic there, so it'll only pick up his voice and the background noise. You can hear it. Turn it up. You can hear it a little bit, but there is background noise. Now, a lot of people think that background noise is the sound of the jet engines on the zero-gravity aircraft. There's another possible explanation for what that noise is. Notice that Sonny Williams...
onto the structure of the spacecraft out to the solar rays.
You hear that? There's a lot of background noise there. She's not using a near-field mic, so the background noise is being picked up. There is a lot of noise.
A little farther on. Come on.
The background noise, if it's a giant bitter solenoid that she's inside, would be caused by this. We have, with this kind of electromagnet, we don't have coiled copper wire. We have these plates, magnetic plates, which create the coil. But they produce such a lot of heat because there's so much power involved, 20 Teslas, just on this one, that water has to go through the water cools the coils, basically. So there's huge amounts of water under high pressure sloshing through these plates. These are the plates, stacks of plates, and the water goes through the perforations here. You can see it going through. That would have to be going on all the time, so it would create this background noise. You can see this is the work of the Dutch team. They levitated all sorts of objects. Anything basically that they put inside the solenoid will float. So we've got pieces of fruit, we've got an insect, blobs of water, yeah? Blobs of water. NASA just loves showing us blobs of water. It's because they probably got the idea from these guys. A frog, a nut, yeah? So hard objects, plastic, microphones, anything. Pens will float. Pencils. So this accounts for the cylindrical shape of the modules, ISS modules. This accounts for all the objects floating. A range of materials will float inside the field. Background noise from the cooling, water cooling system. This, remember when this came out? Frog bombed. This rocket launch. Somebody found a little frog amongst the debris that was in the cloud of debris that was produced by the rocket. A bit odd, don't you think? That they would have. I mean, what are the odds that you capture this little tiny frog? What would a frog be doing out in the wherever they are? Doesn't look like a swamp or a sort of environment where you'd find frogs. I wonder if they put this in on purpose as a sort of inside joke. Makes you wonder. Anyway, check it out. Diamagnetism. Magnetic levitation. NASA could just build a bigger one of these cylinders, these bitter solenoids, huge one, fitted out with all the computers and all the gadgets that you see, make it look like the inside of a space station. I mean, you really think that they'd be using mice? They've got a $19 billion a year budget. And this stuff's not even new, it's been around since 1933. You think they didn't pick up on it? Makes you wonder.